Okay, fine.
And now we're live.
Hello, hello.
We are live coming to you from Ollie's Pub in Cape Coral. Have a couple of guests here in studio today.
Uh,
Got both of my daughters. Some folks came in to enjoy themselves, so they're gonna hopefully they have some fun here listening to us go back and forth on a few of the big issues. This is a Democrat and Republican walk into a bar, and I am your Democratic host, Dr. Cindy Banier.
And I'm, of course, your Republican host, Sean Hartman.
And so glad to see you here today. Getting cooling off from the heat outside. I got some kind of sour beer. I said no IPA. That's what I said.
Already finished my Mountain Dew. I had walked here from Del Prado from the bus stop because I had to go to the store real quick. So it was a bit of a walk. And it's a bit of a walk in 95-degree weather. So
it's hot. Yeah, the air conditioning in my car is even struggling. But yeah, I was out doing getting some secondhand Barbies out in Lehigh from my friend. Yeah, shout out to my friend Lexa, who is her daughters are a little bit older. My daughters are a little bit younger, so we got those Barbies on the reuse. So. Got a sweet house in the back too, by the way.
Ooh,
nice. Very excited.
I actually genuinely like that movie. I did get a chance to see it. We were talking about it too. Like that, I mean, how there was so much backlash from conservatives who were like, but I actually had a lot of my conservative friends liked it as well. So I don't really think, I think there was a little bit more of a hype from the right wing because they just wanted to be angry at something, I guess. But it was like,
it's real live people that I know that saw it like that.
Yeah, I know a lot of even conservative people who saw it and liked it. I saw it more as a reversal of roles commentary, and so I thought it was a very interesting and very, very silly movie.
I mean, like, it was definitely like aimed at my demographic of like middle-aged mom. Like I went with a bunch of other women. We were crying because it was just like about that like hopefulness and like how Barbie was like, during our era when we were little girls, it was like Barbie could be anything, and then you get out in the real world, it's a little bit more complicated. Yeah. So
and so it really, I think it really did itself some justice. But this is not a show about
movie review.
Anyway,
it was just top of mind for today. So
and then yesterday I went up to Captiva.
Oh yeah, how's Captiva doing?
So beautiful. Oh, me and my friends, we went. We were out in the Gulf of Mexico. We actually did a prayer in the water. It was really cool, and it was just a beautiful time. Just to go out there. Sanibel looks a lot different after both of the hurricane. You know, Hurricane Dalla didn't really hit us that badly as compared to Hurricane Ian, but of course Hurricane Ian did hit us. And you could see a lot of trees were still torn down and everything as we were passing through Sanibel. But again, it's such a beautiful. It's just a beautiful place. It really is all I could say. It's such a beautiful place. If you ever get a chance to go down there, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and actually, it's so funny because it does feel like a whole nother world from here in
Cape. It really does.
In Fort Myers and Cape Coral, and you get out to the island, you're like,
it's like this is
what everybody's talking about.
It's an entirely different thing.
If you can make it. So Sean just came and told me he's making brownie sundaes for the kids. He's got all sorts of great sandwiches and stuff. So if you come out to Ollie's, come see a show, you can grab a sandwich. And, thanks to Ollie's for hosting us here.
Absolutely, as always.
Actually, as we were talking about Captiva, one of the things I was going to say is there's been a big controversy. Have you heard about that?
I have not heard of No, I don't know this controversy.
Obviously, Hurricane Ian really beat up the Barrier Islands. Actually, the northern tip of Captiva, where South Seas is, did fared better than some of the other places. They only had about like 4 to 5 feet of storm surge as opposed to the lower half, and then Sanibel, which had like 11 to 14. So anyway, the South Seas Resort takes over basically the whole north end of Captiva, and they were trying to do a little like dealing with the county commission to get an exemption to put more high density residential and resort areas in there, and to build above the 4-story minimum to put 6-story units out down in the end there. And
so I guess my question is what is the actual problem with that, I guess, is what I'm trying to understand.
Okay, so the actual problem is one that there is a county and a ordinance about building on the barrier islands because it's dangerous because they're the barrier islands. So because of the wind and the hurricanes, you don't want to build too high. And because Captiva is the furthest away. Basically, you have to go all the way down
Yeah.
Captiva and Sanibel to get out.
Yeah.
It takes about 24 to 48 hours to evacuate people from that area.
Mm.
So there was a decision a very long time ago when it comes to emergency planning to not have high density residential areas in that part.
Okay.
And on top of it, the wastewater system in Captiva is actually trying to hook up to the wastewater system in Sanibel, and having additional density there would make it difficult for the sewer system there to handle. So
well, that second part, it creates a very crappy situation.
It's
for everyone.
literally shitty situation. Of course, there, it was kind of like par for the course. Yeah, county commission.
Well, yeah,
shenanigans because this had come from the developers. There was actually a new owner for South Seas Resort.
Yeah, some group of firms that I did read just purchased it a few years ago. So that makes sense. And look, this is, mind you, par for the course when it comes to our county commission. There tends to be a very pro-developer, very close relationship between county government and developers. You even have county commissioners who are developers and candidates who are running for office who are developers. So it's something, unfortunately, that is a part of our local politics and our local Republican Party that I am personally against, because at the same time, though, I really don't know all the facts. I'm not necessarily against an expansion, but what you're saying, and if assuming it's, I don't know all the details, but assuming that's true, where there's an actual safety issue, then yeah, I would be totally against it.
Yeah. So there's a few things that are a problem. Okay. One is the safety issue. Second is the sewer issue. Third is, the availability of the land and the environment to take on that level, additional level of folks.
That's an area that's very beautiful that I wouldn't want overdeveloped. That's for sure.
And people have been trying to stop the expansion of South Seas. Actually, who's a famous Southwest Florida resident who's been fighting that since the 70s? Robert Rauschenberg, who is the artist.
Yes.
Robert Rauschenberg actually bought all of the properties along that northern border of Captiva and South Seas Resort to stop the expansion. He did that in the 70s. He basically went to the people who owned all those cottages and said, I will buy them when you die if you promise to never sell them to South Seas Resort. And so that's actually why South Seas Resort doesn't own all of Captiva, because of Bob Rauschenberg. But anyway,
thank God for that, because again, if you have and we were at Captiva, we were just south of South Seas, so we were in that same area, and it's just yeah, I think so, somewhere around there. I don't fully remember exactly.
You would remember the bubble room.
Yeah, I don't think we passed the bubble room. I wanted to go to the bubble room.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Weird, itchy restaurant out there.
Yeah. Very classic and historical. I think it's been around since the 70s.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time. It's Christmas all year at the bubble room. Wow. That's the theme. It's like the place that people like. That's where you go on your vacation. My kids, our friends would come down from Michigan, and we would go to the bubble room.
We only went basically for the sunset, because I work on Saturdays until 3, and so I couldn't go the whole day. I would have gone, but then I worked till 3, and then my other friend who was taking us was working till 5. But yeah, no, very beautiful area, and it's one of the you definitely don't want something where a private organization, a private resort, owns an entire island,
right? Yeah, because it's very problematic.
It denies the beauty of that public area, the beaches over there, everything that I got a chance to see. It would have privatized that and not allowed everyday folks to go and see it.
And I mean, there's a ton of small businesses there. Stillwell, Sandy Stillwell owns Captiva Island Inn, which is a series of small resorts there. It's like very small inns, as well as RC Otters and Key Lime Bistro. And it's, that's kind of part of the charm, right? Yeah. It's this old Florida style. But let me tell you a little bit about the other part of the controversy. So this came up, the expansion request came up in front of the county commission. County commission was like, oh yeah, we're going to vote for it. And then all of a sudden there were people going, wait a second, this didn't follow protocol, because they had said that, actually it had came from staff And so it didn't need to be approved or notified the people who were living in the area. However, it was a proposal that was put forth by South Seas Resort in and of itself. So actually the people, they're residents of South Seas Resort that like they own the properties there. They were not informed of this expansion. And they were, of course, very upset about this because it's going to seriously challenge their current way of life to put additional, I think it was like 1,500 person capacity in this very small area.
That creates that in and of itself creates traffic issue. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
we have this issue, and I remember because when I was running for city council in Cape Coral, this is one of the big issues we were talking about because of the residential developments that were coming in, all the people moving in. We did not have the infrastructure to do anything. We did not have the infrastructure to basically take on the added capacity, and so we've been having more traffic accidents, more issues here in Cape Coral. And Cape Coral's large; we're the largest city physically and population-wise, but we're the largest city in the county. And so if we're having that issue in Cape Coral in an island that is,
and there's one road,
there's like one road on Cape. I'm telling you,
on and off.
It's basically the island itself. I just realized you don't edit these, so that's going to be in the podcast recording.
I mean,
I can't. Anyway, but the island itself is probably the size of one block of neighborhood, maybe 2 blocks of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's a very small island. So unless they're getting all those people in and out by boat only, then
no.
Which of course they're not.
No, they're not.
Or if they're keeping them isolated only on that property and they're not going out from there, then no.
No, you can't. I mean, you're talking like a huge burden. And Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation was leading the charge on this to sign the petition to get people to stand up against this and raise the alarm on this. So that's going on. It hasn't been resolved yet. It did, because of the irregularities of the original vote on it. The vote got postponed, but it's going to come back through the county commission, and we'll have to see whether or not that very, very strong and powerful Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation is going to be helpful on that. And speaking of water conservation, I see John Heim had joined us.
Congratulations, John.
Yeah, he's on the Environmental Caucus. That's great. And many of you know that I am the communications chair for the Democratic Environmental Caucus for the state. So. Fantastic.
I didn't realize he was based in St. Louis. I thought he was based down here.
Well, yeah, John was in Fort Myers Beach for a long time, but he's been a long time clean water advocate. So.
I have. I do follow that, and then I found him from all of his videos. Like, he does amazing videos of the beaches. So definitely a strong a voice for conservation down here.
Right. So that he knows exactly the type of stuff that we're fighting. So anyway, so that's just about Captiva and what's going on over there. So there's other stuff more juicy.
Yeah. We missed last week the debate episode that we were supposed to have.
Oh, right. So. Yeah. There was a memorial. Our hosts here at Ollie's were not able to open for us. So, oh my God, I'm just looking at the Sundays coming out. Oh, awesome. All right. So the debate episode. So you want to give us a rundown of the Trump list debate?
The Trump list debate. Well, first off, it actually was what I thought it would be, which was an actual debate on policy.
Isn't that cute?
It was very nice. Very nice.
So very old timey.
very old timey basic policy debate. I will tell you the 2 people that really stood out to me, and this is just me personally. Weirdly enough, Doug Burgum. I thought Doug Burgum did very well in just presenting himself as just a reasonable voice and staying on message. And then Byron Donald's F- clean foot. I'm just reading what John Heim is saying. Sorry. Anyway, and then Nikki Haley, I think, did a very good job as presenting herself as a very reasonable voice. I like what she said when it came to the budget, how many people forget that she was an accountant before she got into public office. She comes from that accounting side. And so she has a very good understanding of the budget, as well as, of course, foreign policy with her ambassadorship.
Her UN experience.
Your UN experience, which I very much appreciate. We both are, as you would say, globalists, because we're not really globalists, but we're internationalists. We see we both understand the importance of American leadership on the world stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I've always appreciated that about Nikki Haley, and I think she even presented a very reasonable case with her stance on abortion, where she was like being realistic. She's like, look, We need 60 votes in the Senate in order to get any national abortion ban out. And quite frankly, I'm against it. And I think Doug Burgum said it too. He pulled out his Constitution. He's like, the Constitution is very clear, 10th Amendment. And I said it.
Like, show me in the Constitution where it says you should be in my vagina. I can't find that.
No. So that this is why that right belongs to the states per the 10th Amendment of the Constitution.
No, I'm pretty sure it belongs to the individual.
It could be, yeah, to the states, to states or to the people, technically.
Yeah, what does not belong to the federal or the state belongs to the individual. So,
anyway,
my vagina.
we've had the pro-life discussion already. But again, I liked how both of them came with that answer and were very reasonable about it, where others were like, we need to do a national ban, we need to do that, we need this. And I don't think constitutionally a national ban I don't think a national ban is constitutional. I don't think the federal government should be involved in general with the abortion debate. I do think it should be a state issue. And again, of course, we disagree on that, but
I mean, it just generally flies in the face of the whole small government thing that most Republicans espouse.
Sure, and which is what we've definitely discussed that too, where when making laws against abortion is a government intervention into a personal life. So yeah, we definitely have had that. So go check out our old podcast if you want to hear what we said about that.
So Doug Burgum is the North Dakota.
South Dakota. North Dakota. You're right. North Dakota. You're right. South Dakota is Christy Nolan.
So he got on the stage because he was giving people who donated like $20 gift cards.
Yeah, he was one of those, and so was Francis Suarez. Who apparently dropped out, ended his campaign, the first one, and it just sucks for all those Suarez heads out there who were so excited for that.
There was nobody, but here's the thing: he really screwed himself because he made this statement saying, "Oh well, if you don't make the debate, like you shouldn't be in the race," and then he didn't make the debate, and he was like, and then he had to drop out because otherwise he looked just like a moron, you know. But he didn't make it because he wasn't polling high enough, is what I understand. He made the donor cut because he ended up taking a page out of Doug Burgum's book.
Yeah, he did the exact
same thing. So he had all the other stuff, but he wasn't polling high enough.
Yep.
So he had to eat his own words and drop out of the race. So now there's only 2 Florida men running for the Republican primary. But yes, of course, the big controversy is that it was no Trump. Trump's got 50 to 60%. He's polling in the Republican primary. So it was kind of
48. I think it's like anywhere between 48 to 50% now, like half of and I'm not even 100% sure how accurate those polls are. But we'll see. We'll see when the votes come in. But again, I mean,
Trump even called it the debate for vice president. So kind of rough. And so from the Democratic perspective, we were like, this is stupid. And then we were like, Nikki Haley did okay, but is she going to she was giving what seemed more like a general election kind of position. Yeah. But is that actually going to get her elected in the Republican primary? Yeah, probably not.
And then, of course, the big guy on the stage was Vivek Ramaswamy, which actually hurts Ron DeSantis because basically if everyone was targeting Vivek, they're not targeting Ron, which shows that Ron is not the big one, not the guy to go after.
Poor putting fingers. Really lost a lot of momentum.
Because his base is the same as the Trump base, and he angered all the people who are already supporting him. Yeah, and so it was a very dumb decision for him to run. It basically destroyed all of the political capital that he had within the Republican Party.
And the fact is that even among other Republicans outside of Florida, he's not well known and not well liked. And I've been hearing that for years before.
Yeah, he's not a very likable candidate, as John Haim is saying. He's not very personable, as we've talked about before on the show. What I think is interesting, because I like to think about like, okay, what's these races actually like compared to history? And I was thinking about it, and I feel like this 2024 Republican primary has a lot of similarities to the 2008 Democratic primary, where Donald Trump is sort of your Hillary Clinton, quote unquote, establishment favorite. And then I think Ron DeSantis wanted to be the Barack Obama, but I think Vivek's ending up being the Barack Obama, and Ron DeSantis is becoming the John Edwards. And so I think that we're getting to a point where Ron DeSantis has really damaged himself. But I will tell you, on that debate stage, Vivek was very immature. He came out to me as like someone who needed to get on Ritalin. Like he was a very hyperactive child.
Yeah,
And
I think
how
Mike Pence had a few statements about that, telling him like there's no on-the-job training for the presidency. Kind of
I think
to
there
his
were some good hits from a lot of those candidates. The Chat GPT line was pretty good from Chris Christie. I was laughing on that one, but yeah, no, he came off very immature in my opinion. And I have a friend who's on his campaign, and I've told him like he needs to work on coming out more mature and more adult, because again, we're electing the leader of the free world. I would want someone responsible and mature for that position, and it doesn't seem like he definitely did not present that on the debate stage, and he really hasn't been presenting that throughout the campaign trail. And there's some ideas that I like about him, but some of them are just so far off and wacky. Then it's just
and like highly unconstitutional,
and highly, especially yes,
saying that 18 to 24-year-olds have to take a test before they're allowed to vote. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous pandering and something that's not possible in terms of like how the presidency works, and it's unconstitutional. So it's just it's like you're auditioning for a job and you have no idea what the parameters are.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say this, and because I was obviously praising Nikki Haley earlier, but she was on one of the Sunday talk shows today talking about mental competency tests for Senate and Congress. And I'm quite frankly against. I don't really know if that's constitutional because of the eligibility requirements are set in the Constitution. As much as I think we probably do need them, there's nothing in the Constitution that says it needs to be.
That's very problematic for a significant amount of reasons, but like one of them
the reason it's coming up is because Mitch McConnell had his second freeze time moment.
And honestly, like it's very challenging. I feel for Mitch McConnell, I really do, and his staff. Actually, for his staff, especially, I'm like, man, like to be the staffer at that moment.
He's like Mitch McConnell.
I was just watching. She's like, Senator, did you hear the question? He's like, in another world, and and
I mean, to be fair, because I work at a call center and I space out all the time too, so it's not an old person thing.
I mean, it doesn't matter because like he is very aged, and yes, this is something like we should have a dialogue about, but it really should be like kind of a self-select thing. It's like
well, this is what elections
be like. Hey, our time is done. Let's like make room and cultivate the next generation. I would say not just the Congress, but this has been like a big complaint of mine for a very long time. You look at corporations, you look at small businesses. We actually have a huge problem with boomers having stuck out for so long and not having cultivated the leadership behind them to the extent that we're going to lose a big portion of our small businesses because they didn't cultivate their legacy behind them. That we have leadership gaps because they chose to carve out middle management in so many organizations that you have millennials and like Gen Z, and they haven't had enough time. Not millennials, but you have boomers and Gen Z. So,
or Gen X and millennials, I think is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, that whole middle part is gone. And so we've just had a terrible time with leadership in this because boomers want to stick around for a long time, and our medical system, healthcare system, has allowed them to live a lot longer than their predecessors.
Which is great. It's again, you're absolutely right, and we also have this problem in party politics as well, where older leadership, and we see it, of course, in the Congress and the Senate. These people in their 5th, 6th, 7th term, some of these senators have been around since you've been working there in the 90s.
Yes,
and
yes. Yes, Joe Biden's office was
there
right across
actually,
from mine.
and I saw this on the news today. There are 8 senators right now who were born before 1945, which is like before the end of World War II. They were born. They lived through World War II. Through the Cold War. Like that is, and it's great that they're still alive. But they should be the ones, as the statesmen and the stateswomen, to be the cultivators, the mentors of these next generation of leadership.
Pipeline. And I don't want to see term limits. I'm against term limits in general, not just because it's like hard to change the Constitution, but because term limits have a tendency to then favor corporations and PACs now, because they're the ones that continuously can fund. Yes, they can fund the pipeline. Look at our Senate and Congress, or our legislature here in Florida.
Okay, I never thought of it. Personally, 4 term limits, but yes, I can understand that being an instance.
Concept, like do your job and get out. But what happens is, because you have that certain amount of time, you need funding to get the next generation of people in there. And that, because of the way our campaign finance works, happens to go to corporation special interest and PACs.
Yes.
So
They're
it's
in
slippery
practice,
slope.
theory versus practice situation.
This is very different. And then, yeah, I don't want to have any sort of means testing go on qualification, because that can also become a slippery slope to eliminate people for certain ideologies or whatever. It can be used in a lot of different ways. So we have to rely on the ballot box to preserve our democracy. And that means making sure that we're getting the right people elected.
No, I 100% agree. I think that the ultimate decision maker is the voter. And again, it really, it depends on them to decide whether or not a certain senator or a certain Congress member should be representing them. And again, these senators, they're elected for a 6-year term. They're meant to serve for that stability for that reason. And so it really is up to them on whether or not they're either going to run or they're going to resign. Dianne Feinstein has already made the decision she wasn't going to run again, which was the right decision. Whether or not she should resign, probably she should. But again, it helps us Republicans, so I don't mind. So she could keep going, keep staying on. That's fine by me. But I feel like if she was thinking about, okay, who's best to represent the state.
And Dianne Feinstein, just for those of you that don't know, had shingles earlier this year, was out of commission for several months. So she wasn't able to make votes in the Senate. So as certain things were coming up and they tried to delay, the Democrats tried to delay certain things. But I think it specifically impacted the judicial appointments.
There were still appointments for Biden that were being held back because Feinstein's absence. And so happy for that. Very glad that we were able to get that. But if you're thinking about this from if the reverse was true and we had a Republican senator, we're blocking Republican judges, I would be saying that Republican needs to resign because
Mitch McConnell was out with a broken hip as well. So, I mean, this is a problem when you have folks who are older and their health is deteriorating as well.
Yeah, they're going to the doctors all the time. And it's not necessarily because they're senile or because they're unhealthy. It's just, again, you get to that point, things keep breaking. And so they have to go to the hospital. It's the same with my grandparents, too. We have to, they live right smack dab in the middle of the medical centers in Barclay Circle. So anytime they need anything,
they can just go.
Exactly.
All right, so let's see. So we talked about the debate. We talked about the Mitch McConnell freeze. What else is on your mind?
Oh, what else is on my mind?
We, of course, had Hurricane Idalia.
Yes, I was going to say.
Which did a flyby here in Southwest Florida. And
it wasn't too bad for us, but I mean.
It gave a storm surge, though. So we did have, especially our coastal areas, Fort Myers Beach and anybody along the river, did experience up to 3 feet of storm surge. And interestingly enough, the storm surge affected basically the whole west coast of Florida. And it's kind of the first time that has really ever happened. It did Tampa all the way up too. Not inland as much because it was offshore, but we still had those waves coming in and affected.
We definitely felt the storm itself. I actually held my first hurricane party. It was a one-man hurricane party, but me and my friend were hanging out. But I've always wanted to do one of those. For those who aren't from Florida, a lot of us, when there's a hurricane, have hurricane parties where we all go to someone's house and enjoy the hurricane.
Drink and hang out.
Hang out type of thing.
That's what we used to do. So I lived in Taiwan and Japan, and we would have typhoon parties. It's very much the same. But because the typhoons are just hurricanes in the Pacific.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, like when you're younger, that's what you do. Now, when you have kids and you're trapped in your house for 3 days because everything is flooded and windy and rainy, it's not a hurricane party.
It's no party. Yeah, no.
It's like
it's very
patience.
It is a trial for sure.
But we made it.
Yeah, that was I mean, I think we got it pretty well. We didn't get it too bad, and of course, I think it helped more Central Florida and everything.
Well, yeah, it hit ultimately in what's called the Big Bend area near Cedar Key, which fortunately for everybody is a lesser populated area. It's very agricultural, rural, and not densely populated the way that Southwest Florida is. And the way that it hit, it just didn't cause as much damage. Yeah. So, hey, Sean, can I have another? Yes, thank you. I get one of those tasty beers. So, of course, people who live in those coastal communities, they mostly evacuated. We didn't see the loss of life the way that we saw here. That's also because, there was a delay in the evacuation here.
We were more prepared this time than we were last time.
We were
We'll
more prepared.
definitely, I'll definitely consent to that. I do. It's interesting because Ron DeSantis made a big deal about how we need to put politics aside and we need to do what's right. And then Joe Biden's in Florida and Ron DeSantis is nowhere to be
And
seen.
he stiffs him.
Stiffs him.
Actually,
And-
they agreed to meet, and Ron DeSantis.
That does not, and I get
Stood
why
him up.
Ron DeSantis did. You don't want that photo shot. There was even during the debate, there was that discussion where Chris Christie was attacking. Ooh,
DeSantis for
no,
denying
no,
the
no, no,
Sandy
no.
funding?
Chris Christie, no, Chris. Chris Christie
Oh, wait a
was
second, that's something.
Chris Christie was attacking Vivek, trying to compare him to Barack Obama for his inexperience. And then Vivek went on to say, well, you're going to hug me like you did Obama and help him win. So Ron doesn't want that photo shoot with him and Joe Biden. And I understand that.
That was the end of Charlie Crist being a Republican.
That was what killed Charlie Crist's
His-
Republican career. Exactly.
When Barack Obama came here during the housing crisis, and they hugged right here in downtown Fort Myers, which I saw. I
did not.
was there.
I was just getting my start in politics. I wasn't even that much paying attention to that.
I slept on the concrete outside convention center
Just
to get in to see Obama.
I saw Biden when he was here during the 2012 campaign. He was at some golf course in Fort Myers.
Get to Biden during Hurricane Ian. I just missed him.
Oh,
I just missed him.
that would be cool.
Got all
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, Ron didn't want that. Ron didn't want that photo shoot, which I get. But then, why would you make a big deal about we're going to put politics aside and there's a time to campaign? There's a time
because
to-
he's full of shit.
Of course, yeah. I will not say it in those exact words, but it is definitely hypocritical of him, and he should not have said anything if he wasn't going to show up. I personally, again, the reason we do this show is because we believe in bipartisanship and putting politics aside and having these discussions, and especially when issues like hurricanes come up.
Yeah,
You know,
it shouldn't be a
Ron
political
DeSantis,
issue. Shouldn't
when
be a
it
partisan
hurt
issue.
Ian, they were together and it was fine. And that's because that at the time that mattered. But no, now he's like, I'm campaigning for president, and he's wanting to be,
Well, and I would say, of course, for somebody who's saying let's put politics aside, there was the campaign memo that leaked saying that Ron DeSantis was going to tout all of his good deeds from the hurricanes as part of his campaign strategy. That came out today.
Oh, I did not read that, but that is not good.
No.
Because here's the thing. Obviously, especially if you're a governor in a state with a hurricane, I hate to say it, but yes, being the governor in a hurricane and showing leadership in a natural disaster while you're running for president, that's a good thing. It's good optics.
It is.
It's you can complain about how horrible that is. It's good optics. You just don't say it out loud.
Yeah, you'd be like,
You
these
know?
are things I did great during this hurricane, But anyway, so
Yeah.
speaking of other things that are very bad for Ron DeSantis, we saw yesterday a judge in Leon County overturn
I
the
did see
congressional
this.
map.
Yes.
And this is part of the challenges that are happening on behalf of the ACLU. And I forget, there's like 2 or 3 other nonprofit organizations, particularly fighting for the voting rights of Black people in the United States.
Yeah. So from my understanding, the district in question is a district that used to be District 5 in Jacksonville. It used to be Corinna Brown, Al Lawson's district.
Yep, it was.
And
yep.
then they basically carved that up and gerrymandered it. So basically all of the Black neighborhoods are all in different white neighborhoods. Very similar to what they did with Dunbar and carving it into Greg Stubbe's district, even though it's more reasonable for it to be in our district with Byron Donald.
Interestingly enough.
Oh, Dunbar did?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the congressional map that passed the Senate had Dunbar in 17, but then Ron DeSantis's map put Dunbar back in.
Oh, good.
This was actually when Byron Donalds and DeSantis were still friends.
Yes, yeah, because Byron really wanted Dunbar because he felt that they were making headway.
Well, right, because part of his shtick is that he's bringing Black people in
Exactly.
to.
Well, I would say
he won the
shtick, but
vote
yeah.
like 10-1. So, never mind that.
And-
Little like back up a little bit on what had happened here in the state of Florida. we had the redistricting year. We gained a congressional seat. So that meant that after the 2020 census that we had to redraw our map so that we had 28 seats with around 750,000 people in each seat.
Yep.
Now, in our own state constitution, there are rules around how we have to draw those districts. They have to be as contiguous as possible. They have to have as many natural communities in them. They cannot isolate different ethnic groups of people, and they have to be compact. So you can't have like going crazy kind of thing. But according to the 1965 Voting Rights Act, that we also cannot disenfranchise any particular group of people, and that given the population in a certain state, there has to be what they call opportunity districts, where populations of minorities, including especially Black people, given the 1965 Voting Rights Act, have the opportunity to vote in a candidate of their choice. So that doesn't necessarily mean a majority minority district, but it means that they have, if there's an availability to put them together so they can vote as a block, that's preferable. So what happened here in the state of Florida is that we had a House and a Senate committees that were put forth to draw the maps, and the Florida legislature passed a congressional map that was subsequently vetoed by Ron DeSantis. They called a special session in play, and Ron DeSantis basically told them, "You're going to pass my map that I made," which is unprecedented, by the way. Anywhere in the United States, there's never been a governor that has drawn their own congressional map. And because the map that was passed originally by the Florida House and Senate was what was described as only slightly favorable to Republicans, and really everybody was quite surprised. The map, by comparison to what Ron DeSantis had put forth and was subsequently passed in the special session, gave the Republicans 3 additional House seats and was incredibly favorable to Republicans, as noted by external non-partisan analysis of the seats. So that is what we were voting on in 2022, and did in fact win 3 additional seats for the Republicans. And Al Lawson, who was a Black congressman who had been representing District 5, was not able to win in those newly gerrymandered districts. And I believe it also was another 2 or 3 districts that were kind of written out into be heavily Republican districts. So that has now been, it was challenged legally, and now its first challenge, it basically was sent back to the legislature for a redraw. That's where we are right now.
Okay, I did see something about this, and this is something that you and I both agree on when it comes to gerrymandering, because gerrymandering, the problem with gerrymandering is you have the politicians choosing their voters, not the voters choosing the politician. I do not care if it's a Democrat or a Republican. That is wrong. That is not what our republic stands for. So that's I'm on principle against gerrymandering. And the fact of the matter is, what I want to see here on this, and what has been very disappointing for me, is we have had many, I won't say necessarily the Republican Party, even though you do have had many Republicans speak out obviously in favor of this. We had a lot of conservative media promoting the idea, we won, therefore we get to draw the map. And it was very much the same way locally here too, with the county commissioners were drawing the map, and they were having that discussion of the districts.
Single member districts, right.
Well, not necessarily single member districts. We were talking about the redistricting you had a few maps that were controversial, and you had county commissioners who are speaking to us saying, we want to make this, make sure that we, keep it this way. And they were making that argument that this is better for Republicans and not for Democrats, which I did not like. But you had a lot of Republicans basically saying the quiet part out loud, where they're saying like, hey, we won, therefore we're going to draw it so that way more of us win. That's not a republic. That is an authoritarian system of politicians trying to choose who their voters are and not the voters choosing the politician. Right.
And I was going to say, it's actually throughout history, it is whoever wins, and it's Republicans and Democrats have doing it. It just so happens to be in the state of Florida right now. It's Republicans who have done it.
Democrats have done it too. Democrats have done it in other states, and Democrats have.
Everybody who's in power decides like they get to draw the line, so they're going to make it favorable.
Well, let's not forget Republicans weren't even in control of the legislature until 2000. So for the 20th century, it was Democrats making this decision.
Right. So it became actually a strategy across.
It has. Yes, you're absolutely right. You have both Eric Holder, had been running a Democratic operation trying to get more Democrats to get elected to the state legislature, and Republicans have done the same thing.
Yep.
And they specifically target the end of the decade to make sure
Yep.
they have the representatives they need in order to decide who their voters are going to be. It's wrong.
It is wrong. And two things I want to say on this. So one is that this is actually the second time that Florida has had their congressional maps challenged. It was the 2010 census and now the 2020 census.
Okay.
So it's really, unfortunately, a disservice for the people in the state of Florida that they have to go through this.
And it
it's going to
costs
be
taxpayer money.
Yeah, it's costs money. So that's kind of a thing that's a big problem for me. I actually am in favor, because I am pro voter, I am pro democracy as opposed to pro party. I would like to see the equitable districts. Now, this is something that had been proposed in the most recent Voting Rights Act that was passed by the last Congress but not enacted. And that would mean that we would have the mandate to those drawing the maps would be that they had to draw them in the most bipartisan way possible, so that the districts were evenly balanced as much as possible.
I would like to see that, honestly. I mean, I know that it won't be beneficial to the Republican Party, obviously, because it would weaken us in the Republican states. But I do think that we need more swing districts. We need more areas where that can be more competitive. I have said very publicly, like, I like the competition when you as Democrats bring a bunch of people into the race and give us a challenge. I enjoy that. Well,
good for democracy in general.
It's good. It makes us better as Republican leaders.
Across the state of Florida, because I mean, Democrats are just as upset about it. Well, let's put it this way: the Democrats who do not live in blue districts are upset about it, because what ends up happening is you get those people, they're very safe in their district. Like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, her district is like a Democrat plus 27 or something, right? No Democrat that runs there is ever going to have a challenge.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? And because that's called packing, right? You pack the districts or you crack them and put the opposing parties' demographics in the other districts. And so what ends up happening is you get this kind of sick lopsidedness, as that these folks who are running in these heavy districts, they never have challenged. So the Democrats in the state are not challenged by anybody, and the Republicans are not challenged. And so
they don't have any responsibility to be held accountable.
Exactly.
You take the Debbie Wasserman Schultz thing. Everyone knows about, like, for example, her issue with insider trading. The issues that she had with the DNC chairmanship, right? Still being elected. Byron Donalds, you bring up quite a bit about the corporate interests that are supporting him, which, again, Byron's a friend and I support him, but I don't support the fact that there's so many corporate interests supporting him. And it's a very fair criticism. And it's
Debbie Wasserman Schultz has got
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, again, she's one of those.
There's a lot of Democrats who don't like that, but because she's like the big dog, you know what I mean? And the state, like, she gets to control it, and actually she controls the funding.
She's basically the boss, like the political boss.
She's the boss.
Those who know their political history, political bossism was the big thing in the early 20th century, where you had one person in power who basically controlled the party apparatus, basically shepherded the votes, usually through bribes, and then through them they would give everyone political jobs and different positions. It was a spoil system. It was a whole corrupt situation, and it was something that back in the day, it was a big debate within Republicans, and you had a lot of great Republicans who really rallied against that, like Chester A. Arthur, which was a very interesting, for those who are, I'm just such a history nerd, but like Chester A. Arthur, when he became president, he was one of the corrupt people who was put into office by being very well connected. Then James Garfield gets assassinated by someone who wanted that job, and he felt this sort of pressure and basically created civil service reform, and that was his main contribution as president, which most people don't realize. But this is a major debate with Republicans and Democrats, where these bosses would essentially pick the people going up to president. Harry Truman was actually selected for his vice presidential role by Missouri bosses who wanted to get him in there. Like, these are like powerful political maneuvering people. And Debbie is the sort of boss of Broward.
How does that come about? When you have gerrymandering, when you have political polarization, when you have that capacity to be the kingmaker. And doesn't serve the people. It doesn't serve the dialogue and debate, because you get, unfortunately, what happens is like, this is just, oh, this is a Democrat area, this is a Republican area. And really
and then neither side invests in the other.
What's going on. Like, they don't know, they don't feel beholden to their citizens. They don't explain, the pros and cons of various policies. They just go up and say and do whatever they want, and no one's ever held accountable.
Very few Republicans, and I can tell you this because, again, I've been here for over a decade working in Republican politics. Republicans will, most of the time, they will go to Republican events, Republican circles during the campaign trail. Some of them will go after, some of them will not. But a lot of them will only go during the campaign trail, and of course, they won't go to anything Democrat or anything nonpartisan or anything that could hurt them in any way, shape, or form. Right. They do not debate. They are generally advised by their advisors not to debate the Democrats, unless they're in a nonpartisan race and they really don't have a choice to debate their in certain forums. But Republicans feel very comfortable here, and it's one of the things I try to tell them within our inner circle is like, hey, let's not be as comfortable. The Democrats can be a threat if we are just resting on our laurels. I'm sure you would love it if we just kept doing the same thing.
No, just keep chilling. It's not a big deal.
See what I'm saying? But that's what I'm saying.
Y'all just keep
this is what
that was my campaign slogan in 2020 was like, underestimate me, that'll be fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
We made headway there.
We did make a lot of numbers, and that's, again, what I'm trying to tell these Republicans. Like, if you guys keep getting down the margins, it could hurt us, and you could flip Florida blue. You could cost Rick Scott the Senate seat, because I do think we have a strong candidate in Debbie Murcaso-Powell. Because, again, Rick Scott only won that Senate seat by a small percentage of vote.
Speak of unlikable. Yikes.
Speak of unlikable, yeah. Mr. Voldemort right over there.
Governor Skeletor.
Governor Skeletor. But even then,
it's really hard to look human in his human suit.
If there is any truth to the reptilian overlords controlling everything, it would be from Rick
Scott, Lord.
No, but I do think,
and I will say that the Rick Scott seat has been targeted by the DCCC, and the DNC is one of the most flippable potential seats in the country.
I think if we do not, if we let our guard down, we could lose that seat. Absolutely. Because, again, Rick Scott won by a small percentage of the vote, and a lot of that was the Hispanic vote flipping from Nelson to him. And Debbie Murcaso-Powell is the first South American who has been elected to Congress.
She's a Latina.
She can pull those votes back.
I'll tell you what, and I will give you a little inside baseball on this, because there are two other Democrats that are running, and they're not unknown folks. One of them is Phil Ayer, who had run against Matt Gaetz in 2020, and the other is Alan Grayson, who was a congressman, from
Alan Grayson is
throw arrow, but had also lost Rick Scott initially, I believe.
Alan Grayson has been a congressman. No, he lost to Rubio. I don't think he's ever really he's lost the primaries. He's never gotten out of the primaries when he's ran for Senate. Because he ran in 2018, he lost. He ran in 2020. He's tried to run for his congressional seat multiple times. He's tried to get his wife elected. He's tried to get his daughter elected. And he is, I'm just going to say it, an asshole. He is a big asshole. And I'm sorry, you're okay. Yeah, they're not. Well, I mean, I'm sure she seems like old enough that she could take that, but I was just worried about Evie. But the point I'm trying to make is this guy, he's not a nice guy. He's a very bombastic jerk. He's very much a progressive version of like Donald Trump. Quite frankly,
I don't know anything about him other than he's always kind of running around. I will tell you he's not super well liked within the party. No. And in fact, he announced and Phil Ayer announced, and they were basically both ignored similarly by the party.
Well, yeah, and I think that from what I can tell from Nikki Frieda, she wants a singular candidate so that they're all unified. And obviously, I don't think they're going to convince either of the other two minor candidates to drop out, so they're just going to ignore them.
So I think what it was, is there was some polling that was done by, I think it was the Democratic Senate Committee, and they actually polled voters across the state of Florida as to whether or not in a matchup, Rick Scott versus Debbie Murcaso-Powell, who would win, and she was actually polling ahead of Rick Scott. So that's one of the reasons why.
I'm not surprised by that. Again, she is a very, she is a Hispanic voice, and that was the group of the voting bloc that put Rick Scott over the top over Bill Nelson in his election in 2018.
And she's from the greater Miami area,
which is an area
there
where we have gained a stronghold. So we're basically playing defense in Miami.
Rick Scott's from Naples,
yeah,
and I don't see him being on the ground in Miami too much. But anyway, so that'll be coming up. Now there was one. We're coming close to time here. There's one other issue I know you emailed me on.
I forgot it already.
I forgot.
I think there was something. There was something that I saw.
The shooting, the Jacksonville shooting.
Do I really want to talk about the Jacksonville shooting?
You want to talk about how Angie Nixon, representative from the Jacksonville?
I didn't see those photos though.
Gave just the most amazing stink eye to Ron DeSantis, because she was one of the Black leaders in the community that came in after the Jacksonville shooting. This was where a self-professed white supremacist came in and targeted Black people at a Dollar General outside of a historically Black college and university in Jacksonville. Black leaders then came up to kind of have a memorial and for some community healing, and Ron DeSantis flew in and took over their meeting, and they were pissed. And actually, I realized that in the background of one of the other photos, Nikki Fried is in the background, also giving him a stink eye. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that. So, coming in uninvited, that's kind of a jerk move. I do give props to Ron to going into that area where he was not popular, getting booed, and still going in. And I think there was a city councilwoman, a Democratic city councilwoman, who did defend him for being there, which I appreciated. But I applaud him for his courage. But again, if he wasn't invited, that is kind of a jerk move, and that I can sort of understand. My understanding, he was not invited.
Yeah, so if that's not the case, that's not something you want to do.
Angie Nixon, of course, went on all the talk shows and on.
That basically elevated her profile. So good. How do you say her?
She's awesome.
She does seem kind of cool for your side. I obviously don't agree with her politics, but I always have a lot of respect for a lot of the Democrats out there who are the fighters, who are the passionate ones. Yeah. Like I don't agree with them, but I just respect it. I do. I respect people who are politically passionate and fight for what they believe in.
And I believe it was 2020 when she first ran, and she was pregnant at the time, and still and the seat wasn't a flip, but the woman who was a Democrat, she was a dino. We don't have many of them, but she was a Democrat who was running in Jacksonville, had that seat, but she was supported by only Republicans. So Angie Nixon, won the seat from her. And so
did the Republicans run in that race?
No.
This is, again, we had this similar situation when I was living in Orlando. This happened with not Amira Fox, the one before Monique Worrell. Amaris Ayala. Yeah. Okay. So when she was running, I moved up to Orlando in 2016. She was running against a Democratic incumbent that was supported by all the Republicans. Now, there was no Republican running in the race, and most importantly, there was no write-in in the race. So it was an open primary. And Republicans were just putting their support behind the Democrat, thinking that they can get the Democrat over the top. And they didn't. And then for about 3 or 4 years, they were complaining about her, like how horrible she is. And I just kept thinking to myself and saying in these meetings, like, why didn't we run a Republican?
Right.
Because again, this is that hubris that they think that we can support a Democrat and that will be better for us.
Yeah, right. And that's not uncommon in areas where you have largely one party in control, because
I'm sure that this
Democrats say here about certain Republicans.
You have Democrats who won't run people in certain races if you have a Republican that has a more moderate stance that they can get behind. I've seen that, because you don't. But then Republicans notice this and they put a write-in candidate, and it just shuts it all down.
Right, which is why we're running Democrats in every state.
Which is, again, the wise thing to do. You need to be running, and it makes us better. It makes us competitive. It requires us to respond. And if, we should be responding, it gives me work to do as the communications chair of the Lee County GOP.
Yeah. And I'm amazing at making memes, guys. Every dumb shit thing that you've said, I'm going to turn into a meme. In fact, you should check out my most recent one about
I saw it.
We're going back in the archives, y'all. We're gonna find
They're
out.
going. They're digging. They're playing hardball. But again, I like it from a competitive standpoint. I see politics
I think
much
you
like
got to
people.
be held accountable for what you
Yes,
say.
exactly. Yeah, well, that too. But I see it more like a sport, and we need to be more competitive, and we need to have more sportsmanlike conduct, where we're not hating each other, but honestly competing on our values and our ideas.
Yeah.
Which is again why we have
Let's
this podcast.
some things and ideas because I would love to hear some of those.
And with that,
instead of just nonsense. But anyway, yeah. So, we'll call that a day. I hope with the Labor Day holiday tomorrow, just want to hope everybody has a restful holiday, and big shout out to the labor fighters in our past and to workers across the United States.
Yep. And that's one thing that we both agree on. We're very both pro workers, and I will say this, that the Republican Party, even though rhetorically we have voiced our support for workers, we still need to match that up with policy. And so there's a lot more work in our party that needs to be done in sort of implementing pro-worker policy, but I am 100% in support of that. We need to be a more pro-worker party within the GOP.
And pro-union.
Pro-union. I think unions are strong. I think the thing with unions is that unions are a great counterbalance in a free market system between the power of the corporation, because this is what Adam Smith talked about, that businesses and corporation have all this power and the laborer does not have that much competitive bargaining power. And what a union does is it equalizes that, and I'm 100% supportive of it.
And that's why they've been union busting.
Yep. And
paid to have Republicans.
And let me say this too.
If you want union busting policy, just like they did in 2022 here in the state of Florida.
And I'm against. Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff that the Republicans were doing against unions that I'm not supportive of. 100%. I do want to say this one final thing though, is that labor unions, especially if you're concerned about communism and socialism, labor unions are a preventer for communism and socialism, because if you can provide labor with a voice and power, they will have no reason to have a workers of the world unite communist revolution. So that's something that I don't think a lot of people think about. If you want to protect free market capitalism, you want to be pro-labor union. Just a thought.
I'm going to let him leave with that. Thanks for joining us here today at a Democrat and Republican Walk Into a Bar. I've been your Democratic host, Dr. Cindy Vanier, along with my Republican co-host,
Sean Hartman.
And thanks for joining us. Don't forget to show some love to our sponsor, Ollie's Pub here in Cape Coral. And if you enjoyed the show, we would love to have your support for it. You can get it emailed directly to your inbox.
I got Evie here.
There's Evie. $4.99 a month. And that helps independent media just like us. You can check that out on the Big Mouth Media website at bigmouthmediafl.com on the plans and pricing page. And if you like all of our shows, you can get everything emailed to you directly for just $19.99 a month. And you can find that again at the plans and pricing page on bigmouthmediafl.com. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
See you later.